Hello, I'm James Wheat, President of the Kentucky Ornithological Society. This talk is about bird banding codes, those four-letter representations of bird species names that you've probably heard, and why you may want to learn them. I'll share with you some of the rules for learning these alpha codes. There are codes for subspecies and hybrids, and six-letter codes for the bird's Latin names, but we'll stick to full species English name codes for this presentation. I use bird banding codes every time I go birding. I find that it's a convenient shortcut for entering sightings into eBird. If you prefer to keep a paper checklist when out in the field, and I do this when conducting breeding bird surveys, using the banding codes is an efficient way to keep up with what you're seeing. I know some people may feel intimidated by this use of jargon, but if you've ever felt put off by this on a field trip, please consider that these people are trying to learn, and learning retention is improved with practice. Each of the four-letter codes is unique to a given species, and there are really only two requirements for learning them. First, it is important to know the correct species name. For example, pintail and goldfinch aren't the actual full species names, even though birders aren't likely to be confused about which bird you mean. It's northern pintail and American goldfinch. The only other requirement is that you want to learn them. Once you know the basic rules and understand that there are some exceptions, you will be fluent in no time. I'll spell out the few simple rules and point out some of the exceptions, and you'll soon be calling out motos and tooties on your bird walks. Let's get started. We'll begin simply. The first rule is that if your bird has a single word name, the banding code is the first four letters. Simple. Here are 16 examples from Kentucky. The banding codes are right there for you to see. As the bird names get more complicated, there are additional rules to account for this. Let's move on to birds with two names. There are nearly 170 relatively or locally common birds in Kentucky with two-word names, so I'll pick out 16 of them as a representative sample. The second rule is that if your bird has a two-word name, the banding code is the first two letters of each name. Still pretty simple. Here are 16 examples from Kentucky. I hope this is starting to make some sense to you. If you want to test yourself, I've made an exercise of the two-word named birds so you can practice. Look for the link on the web page near the link for this presentation. Enjoy that. Now I'm going to complicate things a little. What happens when two or more species would have the same four letters as the banding code? How do we resolve the conflict? Let's look at a few examples. First, we have the cackling goose and Canada goose. As you can see, the unmodified code for both would be CAGO. To resolve this conflict, most of the time, the first three letters of the first word and the first letter of the second word corrects for the conflict, resulting in CACG and CANG. This formula works for bank swallow and barn swallow. The unmodified code would be BASW. What are the correct banding codes for this pair of swallows? Give it a try. BANS and BARS. Very good. What was that, you asked? Good catch. Bahama swallow is BAHS. You're getting the hang of this already. Nice. Here's a third example, but this one is where the birds that share the unmodified code aren't related to each other like the geese and the swallows we just mentioned. Our beautiful blue cerulean warbler shares an unmodified code with the subtle beige stylings of the cedar waxwing, CEWA. The modified codes are, you've got this, CERW and CEDW. To keep us on the path, I'll add some additional information about some other conflicts with two-word bird names in another exercise that you can review on your own. Again, look for the link on the webpage near the link for this presentation. Getting back to the rules, next we'll talk about birds with three-word names. There are about 66 of these birds in Kentucky. Here we have a pair of rules that govern these species alpha codes. The first of these rules is to use the first letter of each of the first two words, usually descriptive words, and the first two letters of the last word, which indicates the kind of bird. Let's look at 8 examples. What are the banding codes for these species? Good. Let's move to the next rule, which has a slight variation. Remember, we are still on birds with 3-word names, but now let's consider hyphenated words. The rule requires 1 letter from each of the hyphenated words and 2 letters from the other, no matter if it comes first or last. That's the variation. Check out these bird names where the descriptor is hyphenated. Now look at some of the bird type names that are hyphenated rather than the descriptor. Remember the rule: 1 letter from each of the hyphenated words and 2 letters from the other, no matter if it comes first or last. I've given you another exercise with the rest of the 3-word name birds, but I'll leave the topic with a special case. Which 3-word bird has 2 hyphens? Any guesses? There it is, the Chuck-Will's widow. Its banding code follows the first rule, and it is CWWI. Let's bring it on home with the last group of bird banding codes for birds with 4-word names. This one's easy because it ignores the hyphens altogether. The rule is to use the first letter of each word. What are the alpha codes here? Well done. Now I'm going to share one last twist, the beloved black-throated green warbler. The unmodified code is BTGW, but that conflicts with a bird that's only shown up in Kentucky twice, both in winter, a female in 1986 in the Lexington Cemetery, and the other at Surrey Hills Farm in Louisville, the black-throated gray warbler. With the first couple letters in green and gray being the same, the committee decided to jump to the last letter in the third word. So the black-throated green would be BTNW, and the black-throated gray would be BTYW. Got that? To wrap up this presentation, I'll reiterate what I said at the top. Learning these banding codes can save time in listing the birds you see, whether you do it in eBird or with pencil and paper. Make sure you know the full species names of your birds. It is helpful to have a learning buddy with whom you can challenge and quiz each other. If writing a post on BirdKY or on social media, spell out the species name the first time, put the code in parentheses, then use the code after that if you prefer. When you see a bird, spare a brief thought about its banding code to help you solidify your learning. Take your time with it and be good to yourself if you feel some frustration from time to time. You'll get it. And try to have some fun with it. What are the bird banding codes for your birding colleagues? Thank you for watching, and good birding. James Wheat, Jawh.